Hello, Data.
Hello.
Thank you for joining. Data is an anthropologist, and he's working very actively with contemporary art and theoretical research of social engaged art in the projects. He was part of GeoAIR since 2012. If I'm correct, and now he's working in State Silk Museum as an international program curator, and he's very actively interested in public spaces and practices in socially engaged art in public spaces. I think that would be short introduction from me, and maybe you can add more about you a little bit, and then we are happy to listen.
Yeah, no, I think that was a perfect introduction. Thank you so much, Nata, for the introduction. Thank you for inviting to the project. Hello, everybody. I'm Data Chigholashvili, and yeah, as Nata said, my work for the last years is, the way I say it, it's between social anthropology and contemporary art. And since 2012, I was working at GeoAIR, which is an artist-run organization in Tbilisi, and currently I am a curator of international programs at the State Silk Museum. And somebody's screen has shared. Something happened in Zoom. There's someone's screen.
It's probably Pierre. Pierre, now can you stop sharing the screen? Okay, now you know it for later. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Shall I continue?
Yes.
Okay. Right. So where did I start? Yeah. So GeoAIR, and a lot of activities of GeoAIR and the interest of the organization, which has these three main directions: artist residency, collaborative cultural projects, and contemporary art archive. It was focused a lot on the city and the urban topics. And today, since we have very limited time to present, I will very briefly touch upon two things. One of them, well, I would like to start with the publication that we made, and I believe my colleague Nini is also here, with whom I've worked on a lot of projects at GeoAIR, and she will be the speaker tomorrow. So a lot of projects that we were working on there came together in this publication here, which I believe you all received the link to. It's called Tbilisi, It's Complicated, which was published last year by Onomatope, and the editors of the publication are Nini Palavandishvili, Marika Splint, and myself. And as I said, it combines a lot of projects that the organization was working on as projects or through the residency, and in very different media. And these art projects then were adapted as contributions to the publication. There were also some other projects about the city that we invited to become part of the publication, and some of the new ones were specifically made for this book. The reason I wanted to start with this is that to give a little bit of a context about Tbilisi and with arts engagement in it, especially for people who are not from here and might not be necessarily well aware of Tbilisi's urban context. And the contributions in the publication, they are given in three subchapters, which one of them is public space, then the next one is called The Return of the Repressed, and the last one is The Return of the Repressed, which deals with the Soviet leftovers heritage in the post-Soviet state of the city, and the Non-Transparent Glass that deals more with the fairly recent establishments in the city. Of course, like all these three find interconnections with each other, and it's quite interesting to look at them from very different perspectives. But what I wanted to highlight here, and what I actually want to highlight today with my short presentation, and then with the other project that I will be talking about, is that when talking about, well, making an intervention in the public space or in urban space, and when working on different tools, doesn't matter if we do it on a bigger scale or the smaller scale. What I find important is that there's a lot of layers and the issues that are connected um, with everything, actually, and try to think about these as much as possible, and also look at what could be the personal approach to it, what could be the collective, which is also something that comes up in this publication a lot, and I hope you can see more and to read more about it later, but yeah, so basically, and the focus that I want to put on today during the talk would be about the social aspects that we can think about and how we can then integrate it in the intervention that we're making in urban public space. Of course, I mean, there's a lot of limitations, and not everything is always possible, but like try to think about what could be the possibilities, what could be the limitations, and I hope it will be useful also for the participants, to think through this direction when working on their projects. As part of in the framework of this workshop, right? So let me just now move to another part that I wanted to present. And could someone tell me how much longer should I talk, because we kind of started a bit late? So do I have 10 more minutes? Or?
Oh, yeah, you have 10 more minutes.
Okay, good. So I'm gonna briefly now outline another project that I wanted to present, but I think we have part for the discussion as well. So I guess we can then talk a little bit more there if you have questions. Right, so the next project that I want to talk about is, I mean, it was already quite a few years ago, called Cooking Imaginations, Tbilisi Migrant Stories. It was we implemented it in 2014. And then there's another publication which comes in this beautiful box. And I think here I can share my screen. Just 1 second. Do you see my screen or part of my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, right now we should be on the website of GeoAIR, which is geoair.ge. I believe you received the links to this as well. Yeah, so the project, if you want to read more about this project, go to here. So, okay, it somehow something doesn't work. My screen sharing is paused. Is it working? Because it's giving, I think there's some kind of technical difficulty.
Yeah, it's not moving at all. Just.
I don't know.
I will stop sharing and
share
maybe
again.
Start
do it
from
again, okay?
Again.
Technical difficulties, they happen. Okay, I think it's working now, right? So to find more about the project, go to geoair.ge under projects in 2014. Yeah, there. Cooking Imaginations, Tbilisi Migrant Stories. And this was the project. And the reason I chose it is actually to, one of them is what I already mentioned, but the other one is to use this as an example and think about how can we integrate personal stories in the project, but also, what could be the means that we can do this now, this year, with a lot of limitations that we're facing in the face of the pandemic. Because what we did in this project actually would not have been possible to do it now with this kind of limitations. So the starting point of the project was basically to discuss the topics, interconnected topics of migration, foodways, and public space. traditionally, and it's a very famous thing about Tbilisi that many of you might know, is that it has been very multicultural and diverse historically, and people of different ethnic and cultural backgrounds have been living together here. And we did have another project actually that was sort of like a pre-project to this one before in one of the districts, Betlemi district in Old Tbilisi, about that topic. But in this project, we wanted to work with, and we worked with people who had come to Georgia from very different countries in the last decade and more actually today already, and we wanted to see and discuss the integration challenges, what do they enjoy living here, how it is actually going. And these are people that again are from many different parts of the world and have come to live for very different reasons. And we wanted to do this through foodways, through the food, because it is one of very important markers that defines a lot of like personal things and collective things, and especially when you move to another country, because you start to like miss some of the ingredients, but it's also something that brings people together, and it's something that we all like to when we cook or eat together, then we all have to say something, or a lot of people have to say something about food, and then a lot of different topics emerge. So what we basically did as part of this project, we transformed foodways and personal stories into public space. So I do have some of the photos here, and it was very important as part of the project that we worked with young professionals from anthropology and arts, and during the field work a lot of information was collected, not only about the foodways and the food traditions of the participants, but also about their life in Tbilisi. So the publications were created as part of this event that were also distributed together with food when we cooked in public space. All of the publications actually, again, if you go here on the website under publications, you will find this information, what is in the box that I showed you earlier. So if you're interested to further see the content that is provided there and the many layers that are present in the project, you can find it. You can find everything here and look at it at your own rhythm. So basically, let me go to this one part. There were. The first public cooking event was with participants from Trinidad and Tobago, and this was the food cart that would go to the public space. In this case, it was in their direct neighborhood where we presented it. You can see as an example here. The second example, the second event was a little bit different, which was with the participants from India, and we presented this one not in the neighborhood in this case, but during the biggest city festival that happens in October called Tbilisoba, which includes a lot of food making in the city. And in this case, it was very interesting that we presented, and it was actually also the idea of the participants to present it there, and it was very interesting how a lot of people reacted, and they were curious to see that there was also Indian food presented at the festival, and I think it was a very nice gesture to do and present it. There were, I think, like I'm running out of time a bit, so I'm going to go a little bit quickly through the other activities that we had, and let's return to them during the discussion or afterwards. The third cooking event was with participants from Egypt, and then the last one was with a participant from Austria. It's of course, like all of them presented very different stories and also dealt with what food can represent and how we can talk about migration through food. And it was a very engaging, very a nice format, because a lot of people who would come for the event specifically, or the passerby, would stop and actually get engaged in food making and talking about this the topics that we wanted to highlight. The other parts of the activities was that we worked with we had a workshop about visual storytelling, where participating school children made small visual stories and accompanying postcards about migrants living in their direct neighborhood. We also had artistic residencies that one of them with Carly Schmidt, that included public cooking and discussing the topics connected to American food, and also recipe exchange. Marika Splint, who did a sound walk based on the stories she collected from migrants living in Tbilisi, and also about the central market in Tbilisi, which is a sound experience that you have a starting point, you download sound and you listen to it, and then this sound guides you, and you become part of this experience, which is very interesting. I want to stop a little bit more here about this, because this is one of the activities that you can approach the topic that we had in the project, which is, again, migration, foodways, and public space through very different perspectives. And what we talked about before was more cooking in the public space, which was an interesting part of it. And in this case, it's again, foodways, public space, and migration, but it's approached more from the memory perspective, and as a form, it's different, which is something that you could still do today, as long as you're allowed to go to the market and the market is functioning, right? So there's these things that we can think about as limitations, today's context. And then there was also a workshop about by Richard Backstrom and local young professionals from arts and social sciences that worked on the topic of the rhythm of the everyday. That was again about the city and about migration in Tbilisi, and it resulted in short experimental films that come together, which you can also again find everything on the link that I sent. And the first screening of this was in one of the underground passages in where the shops appeared, but also this space has changed since then, because the city is changing quite fast. And it all came together in the publication that I showed you through the video. And again, if you want to know more about the ingredients that are in this box and what I was talking about, please go to this website, and you can see the individual parts that I was talking about. For those of you in Tbilisi, I suppose you can also go for the Desert Bazaar sound walk. So to sum up, what I was talking about is that depends on what topic we take and how we want to represent. It's important to think about, first of all, representation in public space, intervention in public space, but also considering the social layers, the personal and collective layers, and the approaches to what we're putting in. And what I'd like to talk about, leave as a question to you now, is that what could be the markers to bring people together and talk about many different issues and topics that you want to choose in your work, but also what could be these markers, and how can we translate it into the activities in public space, especially now considering the pandemic and the limitations that we have to not only work in public space, but also, to be in the public space. So sorry if it was a little bit in a rush, but we were a bit late, and I know everyone has things scheduled. So that's all what I wanted to talk to you about briefly. And if you have any questions or...
Thank you very much, Zlatan. Thank you. Sarah, do you think we continue with another speaker, or we can go for some questions?
Maybe for some short questions if Data has to leave, or if Data can wait then later.
I have something scheduled at 1, so in 25 minutes I have to leave.
Okay, so then let's go with questions now.
Okay.
Yeah, I would start if it's okay with everyone. I just wanted to ask you, Data, we have selected a scientific library, courtyard of the scientific library in the former academic city area. You know this place, of course, and I would ask you what would be your recommendations to work with this area. For us, it's a place, you might remember the cafeteria at the backyard. So the site is the small green area along this cafeteria outside. What would you think would be interesting to happen there?
I mean, I don't know. I think like it's like task of the workshop participants.
Yes,
right?
I mean, what would be your
No,
suggestions?
I mean, I don't want to like impose too much of what I'm thinking, but I think like as a general framework, and you know, like it's a very interesting space as such, and the library, and you know, like a few years ago, all the activities that were taking part there, that you know, like you and I also have been there together for a lot of different projects or activities. Yes. I think like generally when you know like representing, like making an intervention, especially in places that are so dense in you know history and the layers of different contexts, I think it's like always interesting to somehow maybe not represent but integrate the story of the area, right? Because it's I mean the so-called academic area of the city with the different institutions that, as we know, changed a lot, though the library is still there. But I mean, yeah, it's something that throughout the, I mean, if you observe in time, you know, there was very different sort of like life to that place and the area, and then how it changed, and especially the library. And the library has a very particular story there, right? And how it still continued to function as library, and how a lot of art activities took place there. So I think somehow integrating this part into the intervention that will be happening there, or maybe some more information about the general area, which a lot of people who use this area today might not know what this area used to represent. I think that would be an interesting challenge as well for the participants to think about, you know, like, I mean, you know, it could be an intervention that just, you know, allows people to sit and enjoy the green area, but maybe also while you're there, learn a little bit more about this area. So I think that would be quite an interesting approach. And again, I would say a challenge to think for the intervention.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from anyone?
I wanted to ask something. Data, I'm Theodora. I just wanted to ask what was the main trigger? Like we do things in life, but there is something that pull us to do the work you do with the cooking for migrants. The main thing that pulled you to work for that.
Why did we start this project in the beginning?
Yes, the main thing that wanted to make it.
I think like and like both Nini and I, and also Tamara, our friend and colleague from Social Photography Caucasus Foundation, who was also a big part of organizing this. And I think we also elaborated on this in the introduction of the publication, is that we both, and all three of us actually, but Nini and I who like initiated in the beginning, we had the experience of living abroad. And then came back to Tbilisi. And I mean, I always found food, and I think also Nini, a very interesting, you know, aspect of our life, and to talk about it. And it somehow, you know, connects to migration. And we worked a lot through different projects about the idea of food. I mean, not only in Tbilisi, but also through residencies in other parts. So there were a few years that we were working on the topic of food, actually. And for Tbilisi, like as I said in the beginning, it was this idea of these groups and people who have been living here for centuries, traditionally, and especially in the old part of the city, which also changed. And we always refer to this in the city, but we wanted to look at the dynamics of it. So before doing this project that we were doing, we collaborated with Georgia, who was involved in revitalizing the Betlemi district, Betlemi quarter in Old Tbilisi, and they work there with local community on annual festival as well. So we collaborated with them in 2013 as part of the festival, and we did the project there in the framework of the festival. But again, the topic there was to look again through food and personal stories, but about the dynamics of this multi-ethnicity and multiculturality in Old Tbilisi and how that changed. And then because there was a lot of people coming to Georgia, had come to Georgia from all around the world, really, and we wanted to also see how this was, to look at this situation and to look at it through food was actually very interesting, and I would say a good decision, because it really is something that, shows a lot about all of us, and also makes many of us curious, and it's something that can bring people together to talk about, and then just basically learn about each other. And once you overcome some certain very small barriers, then a lot of stereotypes disappear as well, and the stereotypes cause a lot of challenges and problems, and it's just sometimes just to get to know people around you. And then a lot of the problems that we're facing today, unfortunately, then it's just one of the strategies to deal with it. But yeah, so that was sort of not exactly a motivation, but like a starting point, I would say.
Okay, I would add the last comment before we move to the other speaker. Actually, the topic of the Biennial is what do we have in common, and actually food is something that when we start from different nations cooking, I say this is my recipe, this is yours, and then you see that the same recipe is in more countries, and then you understand, okay, it's common recipe. And in our group, in Skopje group, we discussed yesterday about food a little bit. Because we have a lot of Turkish influence in our cuisine, and we were discussing how it is this with Georgia. So yeah, it's an interesting input also for the workshop.
Indeed.
We hope that in the next year we could come and really taste your food. It will be amazing.
I mean, hopefully it will be possible soon to again, cook together and eat together without worrying and without limitations. But the reason, when we were thinking what to present, and I chose this, was also having in mind what do we have in common, and considering, as I said, the social layers and cultural layers in the urban public space, and how we can integrate it and what we can do it. And again, since this workshop also has a practical dimension, to think about what markers could be chosen, what aspects could be chosen to represent this in the intervention, and also to consider the safety regulations that we should and need to follow during these hard times. So it was also in the considered to have connection with this topic, and I'm happy that you also had this conversation yesterday. It's a nice coincidence.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
inspirational. Yes.
Thank you.
We can continue now with Pierre.